to.
Aspect of why I am in a worker co-op in the first place. I'll pass to Cliff.
Muy bien, buenos días. Soy Grace Broston, soy trabajadora dueña en la cooperativa Northside Curbside Compost. Me da mucha ilusión poder compartir con ustedes porque me ilusiona poder participar en el movimiento de cooperativistas y de solidaridad. Y voy a pasar la palabra a Cliff para que se presente antes de que explicamos la interpretación. Go ahead, Cliff. I'll interpret right after you.
Awesome, thank you. Hi, I'm Cliff. I'm also a worker owner for Northfield Curbside Compost, a union organizer, and a lot of other social movement things, which we will get into in our presentation. And I don't know, Grace, if I feel like we probably don't have time to do introductions for everyone, timing wise, just because we're starting late. But if you really want to, we can.
It's fine.
Ok, sí, soy Cliff también, soy también trabajador dueño en la cooperativa Northside Curbside Compost y me da mucha ilusión también explicar las posibilidades de ser una fuerza igualador, entre comillas, una fuerza social igualador. Y sí, no sé si nos da tiempo para poder presentarlos a todos, pero sí, es un gusto estar con ustedes.
I just want to clarify, we're Northfield Curbside Compost.
Thank you.
Doesn't. Yeah.
Para clarificar, perdón, es Northfield Curbside Compost. No es Northside, mi error. So for interpretation, if you're ready, Grace, I'll go ahead and explain that. Interpretation function is not on yet. It will be on shortly. If you're on a computer, you will see by your toolbar at the bottom, next to the buttons mute, stop video, participants, share screen, and reactions, a globe will show up that says interpretation. Everyone will have to click that momentarily when we turn it on and select your language. If you prefer to listen and speak in English, please select the English channel. Everyone will have to pick a channel. If you prefer to listen and speak in Spanish, please select the Spanish channel. I'll go ahead and explain that in Spanish and start the function shortly. Buenos días, gracias por su paciencia. La función de interpretación se encuentra en la barrita de herramientas en la parte de abajo de la pantalla, donde se ve las configuraciones de bloquear o desbloquear micrófono, encender o parar video, participantes, compartir pantalla y reacciones. Saldrá el botón de interpretación cuando encienda la función momentáneamente. Entonces busquen este globo terráqueo, seleccionar su idioma de preferencia y así entonces pueden escuchar y participar en su idioma de preferencia, ya sea el inglés o el español. So on a phone or tablet, you'll have to tap the screen, look for the 3 dots or more menu, then select interpretation and your language. Si están en una tableta o teléfono, tendrán que tocar la pantalla, buscar el menú donde se ve más, con los 3 puntitos, luego interpretación y luego su idioma. So we're going to start the interpretation function now. Briefly, very shortly, the button should show up that looks like a globe. Please click interpretation in your language. Ahora vamos a empezar la función. Busquen el globo terráqueo, hagan clic en ello y su idioma de preferencia. Gracias.
Grace, you're on mute.
I will share my screen now if we're good to go. Okay, great. So, let's see, is the request coming up? I'm getting host is disabled, participant screen sharing.
It looks like Eric just made you the co-host so that you can.
Awesome, great. Okay. Okay, so I'll just say that I haven't done a slideshow screen share thing for my computer before, so just let me know if I'm doing something wrong here. Okay, so like I said, I work with Northfield Curbside Compost. Our like legal incorporated name is Curbside Compost Cooperative. So you might see that in other places. And as I also said, a significant part of why we run our business is to make money for movement work. We'll go into like actually what our business does, but just know that as much of it is about compost, it is also about making money for movement work. Cliff, do you have anything to add?
No, just assuming people know what we mean by movement work, it will become clear in the presentation for us specifically, but social movements, environmental justice, workers' rights, etc. Broadly speaking, that's what we mean by movement work.
Okay, so who we are, I think you can see each of us worker owners here. What our business actually does is collect people's like kitchen organic waste. So, you know, if you have a backyard compost bin, you've maybe like collected your food scraps. We allow people to put food scraps and things like pizza boxes, meat, cheese, compostable, like coffee cups, stuff like that, in a 5-gallon bin. And then you can see here in our trucks, we go around 2 days a week and we collect from people's households. We have currently about 750 residential subscribers. So we're collecting from about 750 households over the course of 2 days each week. Next slide. Oh yeah, so yeah, what we do. Go ahead, Cliff.
Oh, now I was just going to explain some of the, what do we do with the compost, but you go for it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so we, while we do collect this waste, we are not actively a part of composting it yet. Like a dumpster that you can see that a pumpkin is being tossed into on this slide, that is hosted by a waste hauler. They then take that to a large scale compost site about 45 minutes from where we are, so that it can be composted at a large scale there. We're currently in the process of making our own site, but that is a pretty big process. Cliff, do you want to talk about like education aspect at all?
Sure. That's probably the other most important part of our business model is, as a business, you know, we are a green worker cooperative, and that is not the core way we identify doing solidarity work, but it is obviously the goal is composting, which is good for the climate. And we have to go talk to hundreds and ultimately thousands of people about why composting is good. Why might they care about the planet in such a way that they want to pay us to come pick up their compost? And in Northfield, the town we live in, that has 2 liberal arts colleges, there's a lot of, it's a small town, but it has colleges. There's a lot of people who are environmentalists who pay us to do this. So it's not a contract with the entire city, it's just with the people who subscribe. But we go out and we talk to them at their doors or at tables about why they care about this, and then they sign up for the program.
And sorry, for some reason I can't make the like bottom part of my webpage, my computer go away. So if you're seeing my like I don't know, taskbar or whatever that's called.
You don't see it, you're good.
Oh, great. Okay. Oh, what was I gonna say? Yeah, we do education at schools. And oh yeah, what I was gonna say is that we've been in operation for about 4.5 to 5 years. I think we're planning to have a 5-year birthday party this summer. And we'll talk about sort of some of the stuff we do that ties into why we are planning to have a big birthday party, because of the like subscriber engagement that can lead to, but we'll get into that. Okay, go to the next slide. Okay. Cliff, you want to take this one?
Sure. This is kind of an outline for our presentation of how we will talk about how we do solidarity. We'll kind of talk a little bit about the foundation that we've built as a business that enables us to do what we see as useful solidarity work. And then some of our broad theory and strategy that our actions come from, how we found political and values alignment within our cooperative, which gets into our political organizational home, which we'll explain, but is where a lot of us as young lefty activists come together for way more than just our compost cooperative. And then we will finish with extremely literal examples of ways we do solidarity. Some will be threaded throughout the presentation, but we just want to start big and get small into very literally what we do.
Yeah. Okay. By the way, I live near a train, so you might be hearing that outside my window. Okay. So sort of just within our business and very much in our like subscriber facing ways, we are obviously a worker co-op. And so we do direct democracy within our meetings, and definitely an important part of that, you know, one goal of that is obviously just to run a business in a democratic way that benefits all of us. But we also see it as a way that we are learning to just interact with each other and the world in a sort of democratic way. That's a great skill to have going into a world where we hope to build even more democratic structures. Having this experience ourselves is pretty helpful in that way. We make our income from subscribers paying a monthly fee, a monthly or pay yearly. And so that is where all of our income comes from. And we have a sliding scale, which allows us to make much more money than we had been previously. Originally, this business started out charging $6.50 a month for weekly collection. Then we did the massive price increase to $7, and I can show you our sliding scale on the next page. Cliff, did you have something to add?
Just to clarify, $6.50 and $7.
$6.50 and $7. Yeah. Yep. And then
I'll go ahead.
Just that our baseline price is $10 a month now, but I can show you on the next slide. Yeah. Go ahead, Cliff.
Just to add, like, of course, as a co-op, we do some version of democracy, and including this here because our solidarity practices are rooted in that we all agree as worker owners. We don't relegate solidarity decisions just to a couple people or just to one person or obviously to a boss, as we do not have a boss. So just democracy and how we make those decisions is an important part of how we do that. And we have a different slide about how we've come into political and aligned values, which we'll get to in a moment. So that's all.
Yeah. Oh, and this image here, we had a float in a parade in our town, which, you know, a pirate ship. Has nothing to do with compost, but gosh, was that fun. Okay, so this is just a screenshot of what the sliding scale explanation looks like on our website. You don't have to read the whole thing. Essentially what it is that we sort of are just like making a case to anyone who's going to sign up for compost of why they of like what a sliding scale is and why we offer it. We found a lot of our subscribers don't have previous direct experience with a sliding scale. And so it's been very important to explain to everyone, this does not get you a higher quality of service. If you pay more, you are not getting a different service or more frequent collection. You're paying more because you want to, because you support our business. And then, you know, a picture of a cat to make that emotional argument to people. That's a subscriber's cat. And then you can also see is we just offer a free subscription to anyone who wants to ask for that. If they want that, they can just ask us. We'll deliver them a bucket and just do free collection. We don't have that many free subscribers, but making it as accessible and easy, accessible as possible is how we can make sure that someone who wants to compost but can't afford it just can. They don't have to like submit tax forms or something to prove that they're poor. They can just sign up. Let's see here. Oh, and this going from $7 a month for every subscriber to this sliding scale doubled the amount of money that we were bringing in. So yeah, just a massive increase, and that gave us so much more freedom to do all the things that we're going to talk about. Cliff, you want to go over this?
Sure. So some very basic core theory and strategy for all of us as worker owners and as activists and organizers is summarized in some of these things. So we want to build a new economy. We want to build the green economy, the solidarity economy, a democratic economy, an anti-capitalist economy within the shell of capitalism, within its skeleton as it decays. There's so much more we could say about that theory, but I'll leave it there, right? That is one of the parts of strategy that inform us. We want to show regular people that democracy, direct democracy, works as a way to govern our lives at the workplace, in housing, in governance, etc. We want to show functioning examples of real direct democracy. We want to have an independent funding source for radical grassroots social movement organizing. We don't want to rely in our organizing on foundations, on rich people being donors, or even just member dues. We want to have our own democratically controlled businesses that can move money into grassroots radical organizing. And we want to provide radical grassroots organizers with really flexible jobs that don't suck their souls away. And this, I am a prime example of this in our own co-op. I am able to do a lot of organizing out in the world because our compost worker cooperative is extremely flexible with how much time we spend and what kind of roles we have, and being able to pay ourselves for the work so we can spend more time on unpaid organizing. So those are some of our core theories and strategies that inform going into our specific work. Check.
Okay, so one thing that a lot of us use to categorize the ways that we think about movement work and then make decisions from there about what we want to focus on is called the 6-point strategy for a just transition. I'm curious, is anyone who is attending this is familiar with this framework? Is there anyone there? Okay. So it is, was someone gonna talk? Did I hear something? Okay. So I will just read these off and then we can go into like what they actually mean. So the 6 strategies: change the rules, change the story, move the resources, fight the bad, build the new, strengthen democracy. And there is a rather blurry graphic here that Cliff, I think you added. It just goes over what those different things are, I'm assuming. Yeah,
it's not big enough to look at, but yes.
Yeah, okay. I'll just give like a 1-sentence explanation of what each of these things mean. Change the rules sort of covers things like changing laws, litigating, things like that. Change the story is a lot of things around like changing the sort of social societal narratives that we have around different things. As an example, it used to be somewhat taboo and weird to talk about like gay marriage and stuff like that. And then there was a pretty big change in the societal narrative and understanding of LGBTQ people, relationships, marriages, all that sort of stuff. And now you see it in commercials all the time, and you see it on TV shows that aren't like, that don't make the news because there's a gay person in it. Like it just sort of, the story around that changed. That's obviously not like a revolutionary example, but just to sort of get the idea there. Move the resources is about moving money from, money as one resource example, from, someone who has it to people who need it in order to make change, or donating cars to people who need to like get to the front lines of a movement or something like that. Fight the bad, going to protest to stop something shitty from happening in your city, pushing against like some crappy thing that's going to happen. Building up new structures and communities and systems that help us, or building a democratic local garden in your neighborhood. And then strengthen democracy is a little more vague, but it's sort of what I was saying about the way that we worker owners. One way that we benefit from this business is that we are getting experience in being in a democratically run organization community. Anything to add, Cliff? I'm going to go on to the next slide.
Just on the strength and democracy, thinking of that strength and democracy as permeating all of the other ones, that in every way we organize around the other ones, we are doing so with direct democracy throughout. That's all.
Mm-hmm. We are introducing this system to think about the ways that our worker co-op, what it does out of these 6 strategies and what it doesn't do. So in very literal ways, we move the resources. We are getting money from a lot of pretty wealthy liberals in a small, very liberal, wealthy town. We are getting that money and we are giving it to as many, I don't know, like people in movements that we can, or at least as much as we can to stuff like that. We also lend out our trucks when people need those for stuff. And I'll go into that in a little more detail later. We build the new. We are trying to build a democratic, environmentally friendly, leftist waste hauling company. That's a pretty important thing in a society, is how you handle waste. Particularly, we focus on organic waste. And then strengthen democracy. Like I said, those are things that we do. Some things that we don't directly do. We are not trying to change laws on anything. We don't do anything with legislation, litigation, anything like that. We are not actively sort of changing the story around much in society. Certainly through education, we try to get people to think about waste a little bit differently, but that's not a core part of what we're doing as a business. And we're not really doing anything to, like, I don't know, for example, stop more landfills from being built. We're not actively fighting against that. And we're not stopping a pipeline from being built directly as our business. But we're trying to do that indirectly, which I'll get into. Cliff, do you have anything to add?
Nope.
Okay. So let's see, Cliff, you want to take this one?
Yeah. I think this kind of sets the stage for our whole cooperative that is probably, I'm going to guess, more difficult for most other worker cooperatives. We started from unity on political values. We started from a core of a couple of youth leftist organizers doing high school student organizing in our town in South Minneapolis around social justice issues, environmental justice. And we knew that we were into cooperatives as part of building the new world in the shell of the old. So from our very beginning, we knew that these were the set of values and political beliefs that we were aligned to. And that's probably different than a lot of co-ops. So I just want to clarify, everything we do is not replicable from any other co-op the same way, because we're starting with an advantage that we knew this going in. That's really the gist of it, right? And without going over a long list of what all of our political values are, everything in the world of socialist, communist, anarchist, anti-capitalist, whatever, right? Like we can use lots of words there, but social justice, environmental justice, healthy people, healthy planet, democracy. That was our starting point. So that informs everything we do from day one to today. Next slide. I can kind of take a bunch of these, Grace, and then you want to
Yeah,
hop
sounds
in.
good to me. Yep.
So this gets to our political home as an organization. We started, a couple of us, with youth organizing when we were in high school. We started building up our compost business. We started building up our farm, which we'll tell you about, which is where I am. I'm at the shop at our farm. Grace is in our housing cooperative. The center of all of this is what we call our collective, the Red Pine Collective. This is a group of activists and organizers from across many different social change projects in Northfield in southern Minnesota, our town, who get together and try to coordinate across the different types of work and support each other across the different types of work. The broad categories that falls into is youth organizing with high school students, like I mentioned, climate justice and kind of social movement organizing, specifically fighting against the Line 3 tar sands oil pipeline in northern Minnesota, and a program we call Movement School, which is like a training and education program for mostly young climate justice activists. And then union and worker organizing through a couple specific unions and worker organizing projects. And then last, solidarity economy, right? So specifically our cooperative farm, our cooperative compost business, and our cooperative house. Next slide. There we go. So the first way, before we get into just a lot of like little details of, oh, here's where compost donated this much money here, we figured that we would kind of illustrate the integrating of our compost business with us as worker owners and our money from compost, and show how that connects directly into all of our other sister projects, all of the other types of work that happen in Red Pine. So the first one on here is youth organizing through our organization called Young People's Action Coalition, which has taken a significant pause after COVID hit. It became a lot harder to organize high school students when they weren't in person together. And then we had the uprisings in Minneapolis. But it exists, but less so right now. So this was social and climate justice activism with high school kids, and Compost has always supported it from day one by providing that flexible schedule and a stable income that isn't soul crushing to myself and to Helen, one of our other co-worker owners, as the core organizers of that project. More recently, and I forgot to put this on here, more recently, we've also just paid another Black youth organizer to do youth organizing as a compost worker owner, which is just one of our many creative ways of like, hey, let's just take you on as an independent contractor for compost for a couple months and like, you know, supplement your income that way so you can focus on youth organizing. Yeah, that's good enough for now. Check. Next slide. I'll take this one too. Union organizing, worker organizing. So within Red Pine, our whole activist collective, we focus on many different kinds of worker organizing support. Some of it is helping existing unions become more militant and actually become fighting unions again. Some of it is trying to start new unions in places that don't have unions. And oftentimes it's just trying to show up for organized workers in our geography. Compost supports this the same way, giving flexibility and income for for some of us so that we can go spend more time on union organizing. We've donated money from Compost directly to strike funds. The most recent one, I think, was the Kellogg strike, and we donated to the closest Kellogg strikers in Omaha, Nebraska. And we've helped fund organizer positions directly, saying, hey, we have some young people who want to try union organizing. We'll donate money to our collective nonprofit within Red Pine that can then allocate that money to union organizing directly. Next. this is also a me one. Just because I work directly on them and Grace less so. Movement School. This is the training program that we ran. We started this last summer, and we recruited about 50 college student climate justice activists to live in Northfield and a little bit, or actually a lot for a lot of them, in northern Minnesota, fighting the Line 3 tar sands oil pipeline, which is another project we'll talk about in a second. But a summer filled with real concrete activism on real projects in our cooperatives, fighting the pipeline, with youth organizing, and political education workshops and skills training for them to become organizers. Compost supports this in the same classic way: flexible schedule and income for some of the core organizers of the project, and Compost has literally provided paid work for some of the participants of this program, specifically through education. We have a whole chunk of money we got through a grant through the state of Minnesota to door knock. And so we're able to turn around to youth activists and say, hey, while you're doing activism full time for the summer, you can come and make some side money knocking on doors and educating people about compost. And that was all this last summer, and we're setting up for the next summer program. Next.
I'll just add here also, we funded this thing called contra dancing. I don't know. It's essentially just like fun sort of group square dancing, line dancing, whatnot. You know, there's that quote that I don't think Emma Goldman actually said about like, if I can't dance, it's not my revolution or whatever. That general vibe of like, we've got to have fun. We have to get along and enjoy ourselves as a collective, or this work will not be enjoyable and cannot happen.
Next slide. And Grace, you're on mute.
I went to it. I went to the next slide on line 3. Cliff, do you not see it?
It has not caught up for me. I don't know how it is. There it is. The movement to stop Line 3. We had a specific organization called Northfield Against Line 3. A bit slower for interpreters, will do. So Line 3 is a tar sands oil pipeline. I won't explain all of it here. It's very bad. It's very bad for the climate. It's very bad for Indigenous people and poor people who live along the route of the pipeline from Canada to the Great Lakes. We were a part in the last 3 years. We were a large part of trying to build a mass movement that uses nonviolent direct action to stop this pipeline. We had some significant successes. We really delayed it in many ways. Ultimately, they did build and finish the pipeline. The whole movement was led, and really still is led, by Indigenous people, specifically Indigenous people living near or along the route or from those territories. And it was a huge focus of getting young people to the front lines to learn and apply nonviolent direct action to stop this pipeline in solidarity with those Indigenous communities. Compost, our co-op, supported this in the same classic way: flexibility and income for core organizers, and in a really big way, paying for gas. We had to drive up to northern Minnesota all the time, and Compost was like, yeah, we'll front the bill. Not for everyone, but for our own core organizers who were in both Compost and the pipeline fighting project. We paid for fuel. Similar, we also used some of our compost trucks just to transport stuff. I think those are probably our most concrete examples of that. Next.
I'll add another thing, clarification. When we say how Compost supports it, Compost just refers to our co-op. That's just how we talk about it. And another thing, I think with this movement and with like worker organizing, we are one part of a much larger group of organizations doing this. These are not all our people. Obviously, I don't want to, overstate that these are pictures of like, a lot of bigger stuff, but we definitely contributed in pretty meaningful ways to all of this.
And I just wanted to throw in somebody's comment of the irony of using fossil fuels to stop fossil fuels. Totally, right? That's the truth. I mean, that's the truth of our business in general. Our values is that we won't want to even live in an economy that's based on private property, that's based on debt, that's based on, constant expansion. But that's the contradiction as a whole cooperative and as activists that we walk, is that finding the strategies that we think advance us towards the world we want to live in, while living in the world that we don't want to live in. So like, yeah, it's a good example of like, yeah, we're paying for gas to fight an oil pipeline, because we think that contradiction was worth it. We don't think that our impact of using that fuel was enough to offset the impact of trying to stop the biggest CO2 emissions project in North America, right? So anyways, yeah, the contradictions of all of this are abundant, but that's exactly the world we live in. Grace, do you want to talk about the farm, or do you want me to?
Well, I was just going to add about the contradictions. I mean, that's the reality of being a part of a worker co-op. We are a capitalist business, as much as, we try not to be. We still are a part of that. We have money in a bank account, and that money, from a bank gets invested by that bank in things. We purchase trucks, we purchase gas, we pay taxes to the United States government, which is using our money to fund imperialism and genocide. That there is contradictions in every single part of our existence in this society, because you cannot disengage fully from this society. And if you try to, you certainly can't be a part of changing things if you try to fully remove yourself from that. So I think, yeah, definitely, just that's a thing that anyone in the co-op movement has to face. And additionally, and the pipeline is getting built. Sort of like sad ending to that story. The fight against Line 3 was unsuccessful.
They built it, yeah.
Yeah, and I can talk about the farm. Oh, and so my personal skill set is I mostly focus on the operations of running the compost business. Cliff has a different skill set as a good organizer. We are both part of the compost business. We are both very important to it. I put my effort towards running this business that can then fund all these different things. We just accept that we have different skill sets, different desires of what we want to do with our time. So yeah, Cliff, you're presenting most of this, but it's like, that's just like a division of labor is helpful and necessary. Mm-hmm. And so with our farm worker co-op, Feed the People, the acronym is FTP. That's pretty intentional. We're part of a bigger sort of agricultural system of raising chickens in a regenerative, organic permaculture way. It's a food forest is one term for it. And we could go into more about like that system, but that is just like a cool big other thing that we're a part of, this regenerative poultry system. But having a plot of land that is in a lot of ways like what's going on that land, such as electricity, I think some of the mortgage, improving random bits of infrastructure around that farm is funded by the profits that we make from this poultry farm that we run. Cliff, do you have more to say?
Yeah, recently, specifically, well, worthwhile context. This is my childhood home that we're talking about. It's just outside of Northfield. And it came back to the same question of, my dad lives here, it's 15 acres. And it was, well, if we want to do solidarity, if we want to build social movements, how do we use land as an asset that we have access to? And the answer has always been, we do regenerative agriculture because we don't want to destroy the land just to make money, but we do want to use it to make money for movements. And we host a movement school. We use it as a retreat center. And that's, you don't see that in those pictures, but the movement school pictures is that we have an old one-room schoolhouse that we moved onto the property that is the main host site for our workshops and our trainings. And the profits from the chicken farm itself go to help pay for that infrastructure so that the movement school doesn't have to fundraise its own money. And I think we kind of have that with the compost relationship. Compost supports, or the farm actually supports compost by having this shop that I'm sitting in. You can maybe see this open truck hood behind me. Right now, that's one of our compost trucks where we are adding a hydraulic dump box to the back, myself and my dad, who is a mechanic. So the farm actually supports compost a lot by having a place for vehicle maintenance and doing vehicle projects like this, as well as a storage place for our buckets, our extra buckets, tools that we need to be able to do this kind of work. Between compost and the farm, we will give each other loans if one business is like, ooh, we need an extra $1,000 to cover an expense this month because our subscribers, our money isn't going to come in for another month. So we'll go do small loans between the two businesses. And it's mostly the same group of about 4 to 6 worker owners who run both the very part-time farm and compost. Check. You're on mute, Grace.
Yeah, another thing, or the way compost supports the farm, is that using trucks and like a dump trailer that we have are super important to doing parts of farm work. Things that we purchase with compost money that are also extremely useful to the compost business. One trailer that is hugely important to both businesses. And I can talk about Acorn.
¿Y puedo hablar un poco sobre Acorn?
Oh, let's see here. Okay. So I think I might have gotten added to the like Spanish translation somehow.
Yeah, I can hear Julio, I think. Maybe that's just a mute thing. There we go. Thanks, Julio.
Okay, great. Okay, so Acorn is that big house with the triangular roof that you can see there. It is a triplex. So we have 3 kitchens, 3 bathrooms, I don't know, like 7 bedrooms or something like that. 3 furnaces and 2 water heaters, which is pretty great. I don't know, just like in terms of lots of people living in one place, having multiple things. But anyways, more importantly, this is a house that is democratically controlled, provides low cost, stable housing for members of the collective, worker owners, and also provides very important just storage for someone who is up on the front lines fighting line 3 and needs to store their things for a few months. We have a bunch of like banners, posters, materials for something. We have a lot of like union posters and banners in one of our basements here. And then also provides a super helpful office meeting space for a number of different projects. So, in some ways, Acorn is its own project of running a housing co-op. But in a lot of ways, it is also just like an extremely helpful structure that like allows the compost business to park our trucks there. Compost sometimes pays, Acorn if we're running low on money. Compost will buy different supplies and materials that are helpful for the compost business, but are also very helpful to improving or running this house in some way. Cliff, do you have more to add? I feel like I went off on a tangent. I just really like Acorn.
The title says rented houses as quasi co-ops. And that refers to 2 other houses where a lot of our collective, not our co-op members, as in most of the worker owners in the compost cooperative live at Acorn. Some other activist members of our whole collective live at other houses that we just help rent, and those members run them democratically under a landlord. But we try to help our other members have as democratic of a structure in their housing as we can before we can, actually afford real houses. Is there a good story behind the name Acorn? Grace, do you want to tell the story?
Yeah, so the story is in the book Parable of the Sower and Parable of the Talents, there is a sort of community compound thing created by the protagonist that is named Acorn after the oak trees. Yeah, and I don't want to spoil for anyone what happens to that acorn, but we sure hope that doesn't happen to our acorn. But you know, who knows?
Worth saying too, there's an intentional community, like a commune, I think in the South called Acorn.
Oh yeah.
That's not us. They're great.
Not
But I was like, hey everyone, there's already a community called Acorn, and everyone was like, well, they're over there. We'll call ourselves Acorn too. No relationship. I'm sure they're awesome,
Yeah.
but we're not that Acorn.
Yeah. Let's see here. Oops. So that's moving on to a slightly different part of this presentation. Will be done pretty soon. So that was a lot of examples of the ways that our business very intentionally, in very planned ways, interacts with other movement things that we are a part of or have started or support in some ways. It was all like all of that was very planned out. And I'll talk about some of the other very intentional planning that we have within our business that allows us, encourages us to do this sort of movement support work, just things that we have structured in our business. So we, super specific example, every Wednesday, well, I guess Tuesdays now, we have a meeting that is not like a business operations meeting. It's like a more business expansion meeting. And a recurring agenda item on there is going over, was there any solidarity movement work that we did the past week? If so, we should track it. I'll get into that. And okay, let's think about more ways that we can do that kind of solidarity movement support work if we feel like we don't have something we're currently focusing on. Let's see here. Cliff, are these things in our bylaws? Are they? Those are like things we want to add. Or
One of those is in, the other one we just approved to put in.
Yeah. So the first one is in our bylaws. The second one we have been working on to make that sort of thing of very much extremely intentionally making our profits just like have to go to some amount of movement work. And then we are also working on making participatory budgeting in the Red Pine Revolutionary Collective happen somewhat regularly with a chunk of money that the compost business would donate on a regular basis to the collective. And now I'm going to show.
Can I add a thing quick?
Yeah, please.
The other thing in our bylaws, besides a percentage of profit going to our activist and nonprofit, is that we don't want us as worker owners to be able to sell our co-op to some other company and just get bought out and, oh, now, sorry, activist friends, we decided to cash out and now there's no more compost cooperative because we all got a really good deal. So we have in the bylaws that the nonprofit, the activist nonprofit, has a spot on our worker co-op board and can veto the sale of the cooperative. This has never come up because we are the radical activists running both the nonprofit and the co-op. But if it ever was to come up, we want to make sure that there is some accountability from the cooperative, the business itself, back to the activist collective, so that they don't become separate entities over time and the worker owners just cash out the project and say goodbye. And that is a model that we got from talking to the Evergreen cooperatives, from talking to Cooperation Jackson, other groups that are trying to bridge this gap between, is it just an independent cooperative and it's only for the benefit of the worker owners, or is it attached to a bigger political project and a bigger community level of accountability? So that's one small way that we've put into our bylaws. I'll say that if anyone has other great ideas about tying these things together legally, let us know. But this is one small one that's important to us so far.
I think
Go ahead.
Oh, yeah. So I think a very important part of all of this is the ways that we have legally structured into our business, that we have to engage with movement work. We have structured into our weekly operations that we can engage with movement work. And we have it in our own, personal psyches that this is something we want to engage in, and that every worker owner has agreed upon that as an important part of this. So just in many different levels, we really built this part into our business movement, solidarity work. And now I'm going to show just some screenshots of two very specific mechanisms that we have within our business to do solidarity work that we have found to be very helpful to make it a continual thing when it is very easy day to day to say like, no, we need to focus on like running the business today. And we can talk about these other things later. This is a pretty easy thing if we wanted to just like, push to later, because it isn't imminently important in making our business continue to run. So this is one document that we have created that we look at once a week during that expansion meeting. And the way that this is structured is we are saying like, okay, what are things that we have done before and are currently doing that are movement support work? What are things that we like could make happen now, but we just haven't done it yet? What are things that, with some improvements or developments happening in the near future that we would be able to do? And what are things that sort of long-term we could do, but we don't have specific plans or understandings of exactly how we'll be getting there? We then went through and categorized things of like, this is super easy, we can do it. One person can just like make that happen. Something in yellow is, something that is more complicated, takes maybe more of a decision-making strategy around. Orange, even more difficult. And then red is like, this is going to require some pretty big work to get to that to be able to happen. Not worth reading over all of this. I just wanted to show this as an example, but under the like have done before and are currently doing, you can see the things that we have talked about. Donating to nonprofits, donating to strike funds, paying for gas, joining and paying dues to USFWC, US Federation of Worker Cooperatives, because we see them as a very important and cool organization, and then just letting people, orgs, whatever, use our trucks when need be. Cliff, do you have anything to add to this?
No, maybe just that this and the next slide both get into examples of like specific decisions that go beyond the really basic level of flexibility for organizers, right? So like just remembering that as the basic thing of like, of course, so much of our model is paid flexible work for organizers to go organize. And then this is everything on top of that. I'm just like moving money around. One I'm really excited about is that we really love the work in of the Kurdish revolutionary movement across Syria and Iraq and Turkey and another country I'm forgetting. But part of that movement is building a cooperative economy. And so we're trying to find connections to have a sister cooperative in Rojava or in a part of the revolutionary Kurdish movement that we can send money to, talk to once in a while, just be like, hey, we're cooperators who want to support cooperators directly in the rest of the world who are doing badass political cooperative work. We're not doing that yet, but it's that kind of thing. Why it's orange. It's like, ooh, this is going to be hard to figure out, but it's a goal and we want to do it. So just another example. Check.
Yeah, and then again, it's not worth reading everything here, but just as the example, these are some of the different ways that we already have given money, and we've totaled up for our own tracking. And then also to bring to the Red Pine Revolutionary Collective and be like, hey guys, check it out. In 2021, we, diverted, donated, whatever, approximately $9,500-ish to a movement. One really important part that I want to make about all of this, of both the, this stuff and this tracking document, is that if you look closely, some of the things that we are doing are less than super legal. These are not like, we're not committing tax fraud or any crazy shit like that. Like, what we are doing is finding the edges of what we are allowed to do with our money as a cooperative, as a private business that can just make decisions about money in a way that, say, a nonprofit cannot. And we are getting creative, because if we're going to do this in a truly useful way that is not becoming like a foundation or something, or like, asking for donations all the time or something like that. If we want to do it in a way that allows organizers to have agency in what they are doing, they're not beholden to us, we can support them in many different ways. We have to get creative. And we have put a lot of time into figuring out what are the ways that we can do that? What are the ways that are specific to our situation, to our setup, to our legal official connections to different things, to our unofficial connections to different movements, organizations, individuals, whatever, that allow us to divert as much money as possible in a way that we're not attaching strings that we don't want to be. What gives us control over where this money goes to in the most optimal way possible. And this has taken a lot of work on our part. Like I said, we've been around for almost 5 years, and only within 2021 have we been very intentional. And especially in the past 6 months or so is when we've really started to dig into this of making this very much a structure in our business. When we've known that we've wanted that all along, it's taken us a while to get to the point where we are profitable enough and organized enough where we can just do this. Cliff, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think just exactly that, because that $9,500 or $9,500 almost is a lot to us, because this is a very scrappy, very low capital, very part-time business that we run. 2 years ago, we would not have had the money to spend like this. We would not be able to do, you can see the CTUL donation is a worker center in South Minneapolis on the same block as Cup Foods where George Floyd was killed. In that same building is the tenants union, Inquilinos Unidos. We're able to just make donations, and we would not have been able to do that without our sliding scale, without having more money. And the ultimate point is that there is a quote from Garl Purovitz from the New Systems Project, something like that, Next System Project, I think. And he says, in the game of systems change, the chips are decades of your life. And for us as Compost, we don't expect to do the serious level of solidarity, of money, of people, of resources until at least that first decade. And that's if the economy doesn't collapse in key ways in our geography. So assuming we can keep growing our business, in 5 more years, we think we can be doing some really serious solidarity. But at the 5-year mark where we are, I think we're very happy to be where we are, that we are able to do as much as we have been for only being a 5-year-old business that's extremely part-time. For some of us, as the work grows, it grows more and more, but we're all part-time. We all have other jobs and incomes on top of this too. I think that's all. Just the scale of time and what we're able to do in solidarity is the thing I want to highlight there. Check.
Let's see, this is just a cute picture that the Kellogg, the striking Kellogg workers posted on their Facebook, I think. Just thought this was super cute.
We made it for them. This.
Oh, did we? Okay, cool.
Yeah. I made it and sent it to them, and they were like, cool. This is beginning to get at that idea, right, of how, as we in the solidarity economy, in the worker co-op movement, put out the story about democracy to people outside of the co-op movement. And this was just one meme. This is not a serious effort, but it says, Workers from Curbside Compost, Worker Cooperative, support striking Kellogg's workers. We sent $300 to the Omaha Strike Fund, and we'll see you on the picket line soon. And we did. We, within a week or two, we're down there on the picket line with them. But at the bottom, it says, we're a democratically worker-owned and controlled business in southern Minnesota. We believe in people and planet over profit. When workers strike, it benefits the whole working class. The Kellogg's workers are on the front line and we have your back. And this was not about to make a lot of union Kellogg's workers think, oh, maybe we should own our workplace democratically. But it is the seed, right? We want to start putting that kind of story out there so that more and more workers, and I'm a union organizer, so this is, I think about this all the time for my union workers, about where else can we democratize the economy, right? Outside of a small compost cooperative. So anyways, I just included this image as beginning to think about that question about going beyond our cooperatives. Jack.
Yeah, so I know that I think we only have 3 minutes left here. But yeah, if anyone has specific questions, I think I'll put our email in the chat, because we want to get as many worker co-ops doing this as possible. We want to get people composting. Obviously, we also want to get people prioritizing movements. I see Kimberly, you've raised your hand.
Hey, yeah, thanks. Thanks guys for making this presentation and delivering it. Just thinking about kind of how you guys move money. I mean, a few questions come to mind. I'll maybe throw them out and you can choose, what to spend time on. But, it seemed like there was a little bit of tension between saying that you don't want movement work to be funded by wealthy people, but that you guys rely on wealthy people to pay a lot for compost and cover
right.
People who want it for free, and then also when you talk about getting grants, I'm curious if that those grants are coming to the compost business or if they are going to charities. If you guys have, when you say we're doing work on line 3, if you are donating to a 501c4, that kind of thing.
Can I say, let's see, I'll say one thing about when we say we don't want wealthy people funding movements, we do want their money. We want their money to go towards movement. You don't want them to have that money anymore, just straight up, which is why we get them to give us $300 a year to collect their organic waste. What we don't want is people having to go to foundations and beg for money and promise that they won't do things that are too radical or revolutionary and then have to be beholden to whatever these wealthy fucks decide is important to them. We want the people who are doing the work to have agency over what they're doing. And so we, I don't know, just sort of act as a funnel from these rich people who think we're a cute little business to then radical revolutionary organizers, and we just sort of take our hands off that money at a certain point.
And to be clear, there's a handful of obviously great radical foundations that are not and we work with them on other projects. It's not every foundation is terrible. It's the general theory about the beholding, right? It's for us to funnel that money from, and we say wealthy, it's our customers are middle class income college professors, right? They're not the wealthy. I mean, some of our customers I'm sure are in the 1%. The 1% is a over not that big of a number dollars per year, right? But I think you're exactly right. It's having our movements be beholden to a worker co-op run by their comrades versus beholden to a wealthy foundation that says, well, if you're going to organize workers, you can't do Walmart, but you can do this one. That's what we're in the big theory picture trying to avoid. That was one piece. I feel like I'm forgetting a couple other parts of your comment and question. For the line 3 stuff, I'll go ahead.
Yeah, just in your political work, if you're doing there was a grant mentioned and then there was political work mentioned, and I'm wondering if the grant was going to the compost business, and if the compost business was directly supporting the political work, or if there are 501c4s or 3s involved in that.
Yeah. So the grant is extremely funny. So yeah, we got a grant. We, as Compost the Cooperative, technically a for-profit business in Minnesota, co-ops are incorporated as co-ops, but we're not a 501c3, right? But the state of Minnesota, the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, dishes out grants to organizations, including private businesses, for lots of stuff. We got one to expand composting, like consumers in southern Minnesota, something like that. And part of what's so funny about this is you turn around and in the same governmental agency, the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, they have regulatory power over the Line 3 oil pipeline. So on one day of the week, we and our friends are going to hearings and doing protests for members of the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency in the department where they oversee pipeline infrastructure. And then the next day in the week, some of the same people are talking to a different department within the MPCA about a compost grant, right? So it's like, it's part of the contradictions, right? It's just like wildly funny ultimately. But the grant specifically we have is literally a grant to our business to do education work. Often when we work like giving money directly to things, it kind of varies. We, for donating money to political work, usually we donate from compost to a 501c3 or a 501c4. And that's because as a business, we do need a legal paper trail, right? Like we're not trying to set ourselves up for the IRS to audit us and not to have evidence of what we do. It's like, yeah, it's not hidden or something, right? Like, so yeah, that I think that maybe answers your question, but yeah, usually it is directly into some kind of other legal entity. If we ever want to get around that, and I'll say we don't normally structure things like this, we've talked about the idea of, oh, if we needed to donate cash to like a scrappy grassroots organization that doesn't have 501c3 status, then we could just pay one of ourselves as a worker owner that money, and then we take it out of the bank account and hand it to them in cash, right? Like we haven't really done that, but we've talked about it as a model. Usually we're going through some kind of institution, and we have our own, right? We literally have our own 501c3 as an activist collective, which is part of the navigating the contradictions, as we are trying to do all the work, etc. I think that maybe got your question. Apologies if that got off track again, but yeah, those are great questions, great ways of thinking about it.
And I think we're about good on time. I hope that we were able to see, is the collective itself incorporated? The collective is part of Co-op Cannon River, which is the 501c3. So there's just sort of like that's like a bigger Co-op Cannon River, this 501c3 that then just like funds these other things. And so the collective, go for it, Cliff.
I'll just try to do that very briefly. The way it's technically structured is that the collective is like the members of the different activist projects who come together once a month to share about what they're doing and to approve, make new plans together for anything, and sometimes to approve general budget things. So for example, at our last Red Pine collective meeting, we had a proposal to move $1,500 into union organizing to pay 2 members a volunteer stipend to spend 3 months on a union campaign from our nonprofit. Like that money is held by the collective nonprofit, Cooperation Cannon River. Generally, each activist project is fiscally sponsored by the central nonprofit, and the collective meeting is kind of the way we govern the money and some of the policies of the whole nonprofit, but mostly the projects are fully autonomous within themselves, kind of thing. So it's like, is the collective incorporated? It's like the collective kind of governs the nonprofit. It's kind of like the board, even though on paper the board is like 4 people, but the board just goes with what the whole collective decides. Some of these things, because we're growing and getting bigger, we're having to get more like serious about and like keep more of these things on paper and like make the paper like work. So we're literally, before on this call, we were just having a finance meeting about making sure our fiscal agent structure is like properly set up, because it's been very scrappy before. So I'm sure that's a kind of a complicated answer, but like this is exactly the thing of finding the ways on the edges to make it all work. So yeah, hopefully that's useful.
I'm gonna cut it off there because I know the interpreters, like
Thank you.
it's a lot of work, and I want to give them a break and a lunch break. This was so incredible. I am so impressed with the model you've built and all the work you're doing, and like the moving of resources and money is, it's like, this is great. I really appreciate you all participating and sharing with us. But I'm going to leave the Zoom on during the lunch break. So if people want to keep talking and have questions, if Grace and Cliff are willing to stay on, you can, but I just wanted to give the interpreters a chance to go eat lunch. And
Yeah,
then
thanks for
okay,
attending,
thanks,
everyone.
Eric. Yeah, okay.
And I put our email in the chat if you want to like send us specific questions or maybe like have a meeting with us to set something up. But I also personally need to go.
Okay.
Cliff, yeah. So yeah, it was great.
Yeah, that's fine. I'll stick on for a little bit. Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah. Thanks everyone for attending.
Thanks so much, Grace.
Thanks, Grace. And for anyone else going, thank you for coming.